All right. Well, I'm sure we'll have a few more people trickle in, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for joining us for this exciting virtual animal welfare advocacy event for New Jersey. I'm Emily Hovermail, the Director of Government Affairs for the Humane Rescue Alliance. We're so glad that you're all here to join us to learn about some of the legislative work that's happening in our state. In the state level, the federal level, and the local level. We're going to cover all bases here and have some exciting follow-up action items for everyone to be able to take action and support these exciting animal welfare initiatives. So just a little bit of housekeeping. You should have received notice that this meeting is being recorded. So FYI on that, and we will be sending the link to all participants after as well, so you'll have that for your reference. You can please feel free to use the chat and Q&A functions to ask us any questions during the presentations. We will have time for Q&A at the end, so don't feel like you have to wait to submit your questions till the end. If something pops into your head, please go ahead and pop it in there, and we will get to that during the Q&A. So I just want to give a little brief overview about some of the things that we're going to be talking about and introduce you to all the folks who are here on the call. We're going to have an overview of some of the issues that are happening in animal welfare at the federal level and at the state level from the Animal Legal Defense Fund and the Humane Society of the United States and People for Animals, as well as some local advocacy efforts that are happening with regard to community cats at the local level as well. So, and then we'll follow that up with some tips on how to effectively communicate with your elected officials, have a Q&A at the end. And we will be sending all of the action items that are discussed, all of the things that you can do to support the legislation that we're talking about after the meeting. So please feel free to take notes and grab the information that you need, but know that we will be following up and providing some additional information. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists here. We have Adam Zipkin, who is counsel to United States Senator for New Jersey, Cory Booker. Prior to joining the Senate office team, Adam recently served as Deputy Mayor and Director of Economic Development for the City of Newark, where he oversaw multiple divisions, including housing, city planning, and sustainability. And prior to serving the City of Newark, Adam was a practicing attorney who dedicated a substantial portion of his law practice to the pro bono representation of Newark residents in need. Currently, he advises the Senator on issues including the environment, agriculture, and housing. We also have Kathleen Schatzman, the Senior Legislative Affairs Manager for the Animal Legal Defense Fund, which works to protect the lives and advance the interests of animals through the legal system. Kathleen has been a successful leader in animal protection with over 15 years of government affairs and public policy experience, and has been establishing strong relationship with policymakers and influencers, which led to the passage of numerous animal protection laws, including the nation's first ivory ban in New Jersey. Brian Hackett is the New Jersey State Director for the Humane Society of the United States, which works to fight the big fights to end suffering for all animals. Brian has engaged in all levels of government, placing an emphasis on effective collaboration with various stakeholders to advance animal protection policies, and has been directly a part of passing over a dozen new animal protection laws in New Jersey, including laws ending circus animal cruelty, banning the shark fin sales trade, and cutting off New Jersey markets to animal trophies. Jane Guillaume is the Executive Director of People for Animals, which works to prevent animal suffering through affordable essential healthcare, public policy advocacy, and community programs. Jane entered animal welfare in 2007 after being a nurse in human medicine for 30 years. She is the Executive Director of People for Animals and has worked to tear down barriers to spay-neuter wherever she finds them, and has helped PFA increase capacity from 6,000 surgeries annually in 2007 to over 23,000 surgeries today. Jane also advocates for animals at the municipal and county level, especially for humane public policy, including community cat population control programs. And finally, Michelle Bradbeck, also with the People for Animals, is the community cat manager. Michelle has worked in community cat program implementation for the past several years with organizations like Best Friends Animal Society before coming to PFA, where she manages feline programs within the organization, including adoption, foster, trap, neuter, return, and transport programs. Michelle oversees the municipal trap, neuter, return sponsorship program, conducts educational workshops for public and municipal audiences regarding the humane management of community cat populations, and provides training and support for groups or individuals who wish to implement their own community cat program. So quite an illustrious group of presenters here. And of course, I'm with the Humane Rescue Alliance, which includes St. Hubert's Animal Welfare Center. We are one of the largest providers of animal services in the state of New Jersey with our 3 facilities and our 18 municipal contracts. And we're also working to support legislation in the state that benefits animal welfare. So with all of that and those exciting introductions, I will turn it over to Adam to take it away to talk to us a little bit about some of the federal initiatives happening with relation to animal welfare.
Thank you so much, Emily, for inviting me to join the panel and for that introduction. I cover environment issues and food policy and agriculture issues and animal welfare issues for Senator Booker. And as you mentioned, I was with Senator Booker when he was in Newark. And in Newark, we sort of dealt with the fact that we had an animal shelter in Newark that wasn't sort of performing to the level that then Mayor Booker wanted. And so we kind of dealt with these animal welfare issues at the city level, trying to just make sure that the cats and dogs and other animals within the city were being treated the way that we wanted them to be treated if they came in contact with our shelter system. And then I came with Senator Booker to the Senate about 7 years ago, and he has really made animal welfare one of his top priorities here. And, we're working on it sort of across a whole different bunch of areas. And I think one thing that we'll come across is that there's a lot of overlap between the legislation that we're pushing at the federal level and a lot of the bills that are going to be mentioned at the state level that are, in various stages in New Jersey and that are also being considered in states around the country. And so there really is this relationship where, sometimes there might be a federal bill first and then the state bills, or I think what happens more often is you have states that are sort of on the cutting edge and passing laws to protect animals. And as multiple states start to move forward, then it creates the opportunity for members of Congress to try to make something happen that will affect and cover the whole nation. And so I'm just going to run through a list of different bills that I'm working on for Senator Booker, and then can take questions on details of any of them at the end. And so the first bill that I'll mention is a bill that would be a national ban on the sale of shark fins. And, as was already mentioned, was a bill that passed in New Jersey, and New Jersey is one of 13 or 14 states that have bans on the sale of shark fins. And, what we are seeing currently globally is tragic. There's tens of millions of sharks that are killed every year, primarily for their fins, which is primarily for shark fin soup, which is, shark fins are cartilage. They have no nutritional value, no medicinal value, right? Like it's literally, it would be like killing cows for their kneecaps, right? Like there's just it's terrible. And the practice itself is so cruel, and it's actually decimating shark populations globally. And so we have a bill that would prohibit the sale of shark fins nationally, and the bill recently passed the Senate. And so we're hoping that in the coming months, it will also pass the House and we'll actually get the bill done this year. It's a bill that Senator Booker first introduced in 2016. And so it's a bill that this is actually like our 4th Congress pushing it. And we kind of made more progress each time, and now are sort of the furthest along that we've gotten. The next bill I'll talk about is the Humane Cosmetics Act, which is a bill that would prohibit animal testing for cosmetics. And again, there are states that have put bans in place, that have bans moving forward, like New Jersey. Senator Booker, a few years ago, when there was a chemical safety reform bill that was moving in the Congress, we were able to get provisions put in there. So our federal chemical safety law is a law that is meant to keep dangerous chemicals from being in products that people buy. So if you're buying a toy or a couch or a rug, like the assumption is that whatever chemicals might be in there have had some level of sort of safety testing. But for a long time, the federal law that should have made that happen was broken and didn't work, and that wasn't happening. But when that law was updated and fixed, what became apparent was if there was going to start to be a lot more sort of chemical safety reviews, and what that would lead to potentially was a lot of animal testing for those chemicals. And so the senator was able to get provisions in that law to make that the animal testing would be a last resort, as opposed to being something that was really what they first were doing and looking to. It essentially made it only available if there were no non-animal alternatives that could be used. And what we're seeing more and more in 2021 is that non-animal tests are actually very often more scientifically reliable, provide more human relevant information when they're able to take a human cell or do computer modeling. There's all types of ways now that they can get actually better information than, putting a chemical into a rabbit's eye or whatever it is that they're, historically doing. And so, so we have the Humane Cosmetics Act would ban it completely for cosmetics. And then there's another bill that we're working on that would impact FDA and their review of drugs that are coming in. Again, right now, their sort of first option is always animal testing, and we want them to be utilizing a lot more of these more scientifically reliable alternatives and only having animal testing as a last resort. And so another bill that we have not yet introduced, but that you all are going to hear about today at the state level, is a bill that would ban wildlife killing contests on federal lands, and might even go a little bit beyond that to help in the push to shut down these contests around the country. And, I'm sure there'll be more talk about what those are, but essentially it's just where people are paid a prize to whoever kills the most animals or the biggest animal. They're terrible. And I think that there's the opportunity, hopefully, to even bring some of the sportsmen's groups to support what we're doing, who view it as, not actually aligned with their view of ethical practices and fair chase and the type of, which, there can be disagreement even on whether some of those things, other practices should be happening, but these wildlife killing contests are so over the top that I think even there are a lot of hunters that have a level of discomfort. This past week, Senator Booker reintroduced the Farm System Reform Act. The Farm System Reform Act would implement changes in a broad way to the way we produce food and our farm system, but specifically what the bill would do is it would put a moratorium on new large factory farms and phase out large factory farms over time. And what I think is exciting about that bill, look, politically, that is not going to be a bill that has an easy path forward or a quick path forward, but we have a coalition of family farmers and farm advocates supporting the bill, animal welfare groups, environmental groups, public health groups, because these factory farms are so dangerous from a public health perspective. And we recently, this Congress added labor support to the bill. So we have the food workers supporting the bill. And so I think just this coalition that we've put together, who all, for different reasons, all recognize how terrible factory farms are, I think it gives us a good base of support to hopefully build off of and keep getting momentum. Another bill that's focused on our food system, but more internationally than domestically, Senator Booker and Senator Cornyn introduced a bill to shut down live wildlife markets globally. So the COVID pandemic, most likely, and the SARS pandemic, definitely, where they come from are these live wildlife markets in China or other countries where, they're just bringing all these live wild animals together and slaughtering them and having them in close proximity. And they're perfect breeding grounds for viruses to jump from species to species and ultimately to people. And so I think the Farm System Reform Act and the Preventing Future Pandemics Act, there's in addition to animal welfare reasons for those hopefully becoming law, there's public health reasons, really important, significant public health arguments for those laws. Two more last things. One is, a lot of you have probably been seeing the Trump administration before they left delisted wolves from the Endangered Species Act, and they're now just being cruelly slaughtered in states around the country, in Wisconsin, in Idaho, in Montana, in numerous states. And so the senator is making a big push to get the Department of Interior and the Fish and Wildlife Service to reopen that delisting that the Trump administration did and try to put protections back in place for wolves. And then the last bill I'll mention is just that we have not introduced this yet, but I think at some point this Congress will look to introduce a bill that will put a national ban on fur, on the sale of fur. And California has a state ban, and there are some, New York City was considering a city ban. Israel just became the first country with a ban. So I think there's momentum, and a lot of companies have said they're no longer going to use real fur. And so I think we'll try to just build off the momentum and see, again, I don't think it's something similar to the shark fin bill. It may take us multiple Congresses to just build the support we need and the momentum, but we're going to start pushing for that. So I will stop there, Emily.
Really exciting stuff, Adam, and obviously running the gamut across many different issues of animal welfare. And I think you're absolutely right to point out the intersections that many of these issues have with other issues like human health and the environment. Many of the issues that we're discussing similarly are these cross-sectional issues that are beyond animal welfare and really will help push those bills hopefully to passage. So switching now to talk a little bit about some of the state level action, I will turn it over to Kathleen Schatzman with the Animal Legal Defense Fund to talk about some of their priority bills and what's going on in New Jersey.
Thank you so much, Emily. And before I even start, I think I have to say, on behalf of all of us, Adam, if you could share our profuse appreciation with Senator Booker and just let him know how incredibly proud we all are that he is our personal, representative for the state, but more importantly for what he's doing nationally, which in essence affects us globally. And so each and every one of those issues, as you and Emily both had mentioned, these are not just about animal protection. It's about human health. It's never been just about animal protection because all of these issues are societal issues. And so thank you for sharing all of that. I'm going to share my screen right now and jump into a few of the issues that we're working on. And let's just pull us up here. Hold for just a minute. We're gonna pause on that for a second. Of course, I'm the first one with technological challenges. So we're gonna play that from the beginning. And all right, this worked in our practice, did it not?
I can vouch that it worked during the practice.
All right, here we go. We're working, okay, from the beginning. So again, thank you so much, Emily, for organizing this program today and for allowing us to talk about these really important issues. For the Animal Legal Defense Fund, it really is part of our mission to protect the lives and advance the interests of animals through the legal system. Working on legislation is one of the most proactive ways to protect animals. And so we appreciate each and every one of you for joining today and learning more about the issues that we're working on in state. The first one I want to talk about is the gestation crate and veal crate ban bill. Some of you who have been in the movement for 8 years or so are probably very familiar with this. We had a huge campaign, actually $8 million in earned media the last go around when we were able to pass a bill not once, but twice with overwhelming bipartisan political support as well as public support, which unfortunately was then absolute vetoed by then Governor Christie for political ambitions, and that was due to his run for presidency and the courting of the National Pork Producers Council based in Iowa. So here we are, fast forward once again to a bill that is long overdue. And we feel like this bill is more important now than ever because of the COVID connection. There were landmark reports from the United Nations, scientific white papers. I don't want to speak for HSUS, but I know that they had done a white paper. ALDF we have two white papers on this issue, and the importance of really banning this practice because intensive confinement does lead to an increase of zoonotic disease. And so we're grateful that our legislators in New Jersey recognize that. Our phenomenal bill sponsors, Senator Vin Gopal of Monmouth County and Assemblyman Raj Mukherjee of Jersey City, have both agreed to introduce new bills this year. And so we were able to amend the language a little bit. Both bills were then referred to the Assembly Judiciary Committee and the Senate Judiciary Committee. In the Senate, we saw movement earlier this year. Back in February, it was up for a vote. We were so grateful that the Senate chair, Senator Nick Scutari, not only recognized the importance of this issue, but he signed on as a co-prime sponsor that day. And we're so grateful that it passed out of committee, and the bill now awaits a full floor vote in the Senate. In the Assembly, we had to work a little bit harder because leadership, Speaker Coughlin, was a bit hesitant to allow the bill to be posted. But when you have such a strong bill sponsor, such as Assemblyman Raj Mukherjee, he was able to get the bill posted in June in his committee. He happens to be the chair, and it passed with overwhelming support. So both of those bills are at the halfway mark. We just have to now wait until the legislature is back in session, which will likely be in November. Just a really quick note, January through June is usually the prime time for passing bills in New Jersey. This happens to be an election year, so there are not going to be any committee hearings, or not likely to be any committee hearings over the summer. We're in summer recess. And because, again, elections are in November, we will not likely get back into the State House, and that's figuratively speaking, until after the elections, mid-November through the end of December. And that will be lame duck because it's the end of our 2-year session. So there is time to still move this bill, but that's why we need you to take action on this bill. Oh my goodness, did I just lose? Okay, well, I pulled up the, I'm going rogue here. Let's just bring it back. We're gonna stop screen sharing. And then I'm just gonna share all of my information post this conversation. So we really need you to take action on this bill. And there's a couple of steps that you can do. One, we really need you to call and reach out to your assembly members, your 2 state assembly members and your 1 state senator, and ask them to support and co-sponsor this bill if they haven't already done so. We'll provide that information right after this webinar. And then we'd also like you to reach out to the Speaker and the Senate President. Leadership is really who we're targeting right now because we've passed through the committees. We just need them to say yes, that they will allow the bill to be posted in November. And then it goes to the governor's desk. So if you can call your state legislators, call state leadership, and then follow up with 2 additional asks. One, if you would be so inclined to submit a letter to the editor, to your local paper, we have a litany of drafts that we can provide to you that you could review, amend to make your own. We'll provide a link to a local paper. We found that there's a greater opportunity to have those LTEs posted if it's a smaller local paper. And we can compile that and put that into our packet. And we have a really incredible packet. If you go to banthecrates.com, it will show the 40 plus state and national organizations that are all part of this coalition. We've all been working seamlessly to pass this bill. And it's pretty extraordinary that we had new bills introduced and moved halfway within 6 months. So it's looking really good for us in November, but we have to keep the pressure on over the summer. We have to keep this at the forefront of everybody's mind. We want to make sure that we use this as a tool to prevent future pandemics. And so with your help, we'll be able to do that. I'm going to segue now to another issue, and that is the Courtroom Animal Advocate Program. And that's really a priority for the Animal Legal Defense Fund because some of our folks worked in Connecticut when the first law was being passed, and that was called Desmond's Law. Some of you may recognize that name, and it was Desmond's Army, a group of folks that really supported bill movement. Subsequently, a bill passed in Maine, and now, of course, we're working in multiple states. So what are CAP laws? And Courtroom Animal Advocate Program laws allow advocates, those are supervised third-year law students and volunteer attorneys, to advocate for animal victims in criminal cases. Those volunteers appear in court. They could assist the judge by drafting briefs. They provide research, and they gather information from veterinarians, animal control officers, et cetera. And they provide a recommendation for the animal victim. And so that's really important to give an animal a voice in the courtroom. It's really important to note that in no way does this impact current law, which animals are covered under cruelty. This just adds to the process. And so what's really exciting in New Jersey is we've amended our bill from the original Desmond's Law. We're not just looking at cats and dogs. We've codified the language to include all animals, because that's what our, in New Jersey, that's who is covered, the whole brute creation. So we have all animals in there. And what we have asked, again, our bill sponsor to do, and what he's been so wonderful to have included in the draft, is language on sentience. This seems ridiculous to all of us, that we have to put on paper that animals are living, breathing beings, and yet, as in most states, they are considered property. So I do want to read it for you. In the bill, it says that the legislature finds and declares that animals are sentient beings capable of experiencing pain, stress, and fear. It is the policy of New Jersey that, in order to protect animals from experiencing pain, stress, or fear at human hands, animals are to be treated humanely. For that reason, animals shall be considered the victims of animal cruelty crimes and shall be treated as such in a court of law. That's extraordinary. If not for any other reason, that's why we have to get this bill passed. We have heard a little bit of pushback in the assembly, that the speaker, who I believe is or was a municipal prosecutor, has concerns that this can clog up the courts. I can tell you, we've done our due diligence. We've reached out to folks in Connecticut. We're getting papers written from a retired prosecutor, formerly in Connecticut, who worked with advocates, who can say definitively that the advocate program was of tremendous benefit to the animal cruelty cases. And so this is just a bill that I think is cutting edge. It's one that is necessary. It passed in the Senate. And again, now we're halfway through on this bill as well, although in a different way. It was posted and passed out of the Senate Judiciary, and now we just await the posting in the Assembly. We know that once the bill gets posted, we have virtual unanimous support, which is how it passed in the Senate, 34-0. So that was a little all over the place, but I hope you all Know that we need your assistance for outreach on both of these bills, actually all of the issues that we're going to talk about today. Outreach to legislators, a quick phone call is everything. Emails are awesome, but establishing relationships with your legislators is so important. And so we'll have fact sheets on both of these issues that we can share with you. And thank you again.
Perfect. Thank you, Kathy. And thanks for rolling with the punches with all the things going on with the technology is a wonderful thing. So I'll turn it over to Brian to talk more about some other issues that are happening in New Jersey.
Thank you, Emily. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to thank HRA and St. Hubert's for hosting this wonderful event this afternoon. I'm thrilled to be here. It's an honor to be here presenting to all of you and my esteemed panelists here who I have the privilege of working with every day, fighting for all animals throughout our state. It's truly wonderful. And shout out to Senator Booker and Adam for his tremendous work. Senator Booker has been just a champion for animals is an understatement. In describing Senator Booker on the federal level with the amazing work he's done, and Jane and Kathy and everybody doing tremendous work. The Humane Society of the United States, we support all of the legislative efforts that you've heard about. Essentially, they are all priority initiatives for us here in New Jersey. So we're working on the gestation and veal crate bill as well. We're supporting the CAP bill tremendously. And what you'll hear about from Jane as well are priorities for us. I want to take the opportunity to briefly cover two other priority bills that we're working on. And I'll try to be very brief so we can leave more time in the Q&A for these issues and for some chatting. So let me share my screen. Let's see here. One moment.
And while Brian is doing that, just another reminder, if you want to go ahead and start putting your questions in the Q&A, we will have some time at the end to go over those. So you don't have to wait till the Q&A to start putting.
Okay, so first, you heard Adam mention a little bit about the Humane Cosmetics Act on the federal level. This is a really exciting bill here in New Jersey because I am thrilled to report to all of you, if you have not heard already, that the New Jersey Humane Cosmetics Act is on Governor Murphy's desk, pending his signature right now. So the official bill number is S1726, and this bill would ban the sale of cosmetics that have been tested on animals or have ingredients that have been tested on animals. I'm just so tremendously grateful for all of the support that this bill has received. It has well over 30 legislative sponsors of both parties in both the General Assembly and the Senate. It's extremely exciting throughout the hearings on this bill. I think it's the first time I've worked on a piece of legislation in which every member of the Assembly Committee and the Senate Committee that were considering the bill all signed on as bill co-sponsors. There was no opposition to this bill. It's truly wonderful what this bill highlights and how far we as an animal protection movement have come together in stopping this type of cruelty, whether it be the direct animal testing or in this case, the sale of these products in order to help minimize and reduce the amount that these products are tested on animals. So given that it's passed the legislature overwhelmingly, unanimously, with the support of hundreds of companies, nearly 1,000 companies and brands in the industry supporting this, New Jersey should be the 9th state to pass this bill into law. And as Adam mentioned, the more states that pass this, the better it supports the efforts of Senator Booker and our federal legislators in getting these laws passed on a national level. So it's wonderful to see California, Nevada, Illinois, and just this year, Virginia, Maryland, Maine, and Hawaii have just passed these bills into law. So New Jersey should be the 9th, and there are other pending bills in the states. So we're really happy to see that. So in order to take action on this bill, the bill's on the governor's desk now. So the most important thing you can do is 2 simple actions. You can call the governor's office at the number provided and ask to speak to the constituent services team and let them know that you support the governor signing S-1726 into law. It's a very simple call. You get routed right away. It takes just a minute or 2. And the second is one of the ways you can write to the governor is through their Contact Us page on their website. There's a form to fill out. It goes right to their office. And similarly, you can send your support for the bill. We're in the process of finalizing our HSUS action alert on the bill, which will go out to our email lists and on our social media page on our HSUS New Jersey Facebook page. So if you're on any of those lists or following any of those pages, you'll certainly see that in the next week or so to encourage action on that bill. The next piece of legislation, which Adam also touched upon on the federal level, are these egregious wildlife killing contests that, believe it or not, do still happen even in states like New Jersey. It's really, really shocking. I was considering whether to present a video to you, but it was a lot of graphic imagery. So I'd rather that be shared in the follow-up email from Emily, and you can choose to look at it if you wish. But these killing contests are basically competitive killing sprees in which a massive amount of animals on a given day are killed. And the winners, they may have categories for ridiculous things like biggest fang, fattest squirrel. There's different categories that are just ridiculous. But the animals are killed in a given day. They're brought to an event, and we've done undercover investigations of a variety of these, including one in New Jersey just a couple years ago. It showed the animals that were dead being laid out. People were joking about them and just making fun of them. Then they were thrown in the trash. So as Adam pointed out, that this is so different than what any even a hunter would consider ethical. There's no wildlife management purpose for these events. And actually, these events tend to be ecologically damaging because of the animals that are being killed in the manner that they're being killed in a particular area. So from an environmental and an ecological standpoint, these should be prohibited. The animals in the overwhelming number of cases are not used for food. They're not used for fur. They are killed and thrown in the trash. So it's wasteful. It's heinously cruel. And what I think is concerning about it is these events, teach animal cruelty to children. We've had undercover investigations where there are children as young as, I believe, our person documented being 5 years old, watching adults, desecrate the animals and make fun of them and toss them around. And that's really concerning, because if you look at crime data, serial killers and child abusers and other criminal activity, those people who perpetrate those crimes almost overwhelmingly start with animals and animal cruelty, mistreating animals, and then they, for lack of a better word, graduate to crimes against human beings, whether it be children or others. So these are very concerning situations. And sadly, even in New Jersey, as recently as 2021, there was a killing contest. So if there are hunting clubs, local elks clubs, or local businesses, often it's gun shops, that are supporting or promoting or sponsoring these contests, make sure that we don't support them on a business level either to do this. So I'm happy to say that in New Jersey, or I'm sorry, nationwide, a number of states, I believe we're up to 8 states, have already passed measures banning these contests. And these include some very hunting heavy states that are even more hunting heavy than New Jersey. So I firmly believe if those states can do that with the support, even in some areas, of the sportsmen who say, as a hunter, these events are outrageous, they're unethical, they're cruel, we would never participate in this. We've had their support even in some states against these contests. So this bill has passed the Assembly Agriculture Committee here in New Jersey just this past June. And as Kathy gave a wonderful overview of kind of the legislative calendar, the time frame where things stand, we're not expecting any action on this or any other bills until after the election in November. But I can't emphasize enough to all of you how important it is to have your voice heard on all of these bills with your state legislators between now and the election, because the election's coming up. So make sure that your voice is heard, that you're a voter, you're a constituent, you care about these issues, and you'd like your legislators to co-sponsor and support all of these legislative efforts across the board that we're all working on. And in closing, I'll just say, together we can accomplish so much for animals. None of us individually, or none of our organizations individually, can accomplish it all, but together we can accomplish so much. And I think that's why you've seen so much legislative advancement in our state on a wide array of legislative efforts, whether it be for wildlife, marine animals, companion animals. And it really also speaks to your support too, as a New Jersey voter, a supporter of St. Hubert's, a person who cares about animals. So thank you all for being here, and I look forward to answering any of your questions in the chat.
Perfect, and wonderful to hear about all the progress that's already being made on these issues as well. So I will go ahead and turn it over to People for Animals to talk a little bit about our friends, the community cats.
Screen here. I want to. Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted now. Sorry.
Okay. Sorry. I started talking when I was still on mute. Thank you, Emily, for pulling this together. This is a great event, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it. Thank you for inviting PFA to be here also to talk about our work, not only at the state level, but primarily we work at the municipal and county levels of government. For those of you that don't know who People for Animals is, we're the leading provider of spay-neuter in the state. We do about 23,000 animals a year, which Emily had previously mentioned. We have 3 clinics, so we're a statewide organization, and we're very, very data-driven. So it's not enough for us to just do a lot of spay-neuter. We want to target that spay-neuter to its best effect. So as you can imagine, looking at the data in New Jersey, we know that community cats is one of the biggest problems that we have in companion animal issues in our state. If we look at the annual statistics from shelters that are shared, more than 80%, probably closer to 90% of all the animals that are euthanized in our shelters every year are cats. And the bulk of those are likely to be community cats, though we don't have direct data on that. We know just from working in the field that those are the cats that we're having trouble getting adopted, and there's no other alternative for them once they hit the shelter. So we have been spending a lot of time working on promoting TNR throughout the state. We concentrate, as I said, our advocacy on municipal and county levels. So we've been very successful in both areas in getting TNR ordinances through. You can change the slide.
So sorry.
Oh, I thought we had one in between there.
This one?
That's the one. So county resolutions, there are actually 6 counties that the commissioners have passed resolutions favoring TNR for their municipalities. And the reason we did this, while the resolutions are not binding at the county level, it does help when we're advocating at the municipal level to tell the municipalities, this is the method that your county commissioners, I keep tripping on that, are favoring TNR or TNVR, whatever your preference is. But at any rate, while we've been doing this kind of advocacy for about 15 years at PFA, and over that time, we did discover that there are some sections of the state law that interfere or make it more difficult for us to do TNR. So we have put together this bill, and we're happy that, you know, we're getting a lot of support from other areas, and we appreciate, you know, HRA's support, Brian, Kathleen, and everyone. So this we're calling the Compassion for Community Cats bill. Basically, it does a number of things. So, you know, we know one of the questions is always funding, right? For feral cats. Nobody owns these cats, so where does the funding come from to get them fixed and taken care of medically if necessary? So the bill provides a funding stream, and it also takes care of a couple of things that interfere with shelters and rescues, well, not necessarily rescues, but shelters doing TNR from the shelter. So the first thing it does is it sets up a Compassion for Community Cats fund, which basically is, if you look at number 2, the former pilot clinic fund, which was established in 1983 under legislation. So that fund is gets the money from 20-cent surcharge on every dog license in this state. So it ends up being about $80,000 to $100,000 a year. So we want to take that money, which is not being administered in any way. It's just getting dumped into the Animal Population Control Program, which we'll talk about in a minute, and make that available to municipalities to encourage them to start up TNR programs in their areas. A lot of municipalities don't have the funding or are unwilling to dedicate the funding to address that problem. So the onus falls back on the caretakers and the people in the community that are trying to clean up the mess that somebody else made. And you know, there's not always the ability for them to have a contribution to fund the cost for that care. So this would provide that opportunity, at least at the start. It also will exempt community cats that are being trapped, neutered, vaccinated, and returned from a shelter situation from the 7-day stray hold. We know that cats that go into shelters, feral cats, are very, very stressed while they're there. The mandatory stray hold period, oftentimes they will get sick from being stressed. So eliminating that stray hold requirement, if there is a live release, it doesn't eliminate it for all animals or for all cats, only the ones that are being live released through TNVR. So if they want to euthanize, they still have to hold them for 7 days at any rate. So we're hoping that this will encourage shelters to participate more in TNVR programs, because it will, you know, allow them to move cats through faster, and it reduces the stress on the cat themselves. So it also would require shelters, rescues, and pounds to spay neuter cats only, prior to releasing them for adoption. We just feel this is a responsible method that is well accepted. And many of them are doing it voluntarily, but for those few that are not, this would require shelters, rescues, and pounds to spay neuter the cats before they release them for adoption. It also maximizes the impact of the Animal Population Control Program, which is kind of a sister program to the old Pilot Clinic Fund. that allows income qualified New Jersey residents to get a spay-neuter at a participating veterinary provider for $10, or people who are adopting from a shelter or rescue that's listed to get their spay-neuter for $20. So what this will do is eliminate the need for the $20 program primarily. So, you know, adopting from a shelter or rescue, the animal would already come out spayed or neutered. So that wouldn't be necessary anymore. And it allows the $10 program to be used by feral cat caretakers. Currently, that program specifically excludes feral cats from participating. So taking this action will help redirect the animal population control program in New Jersey to maximize the impact on our #1 problem, which is community cats. So this will actually really change the landscape in New Jersey for feral cats, for community cats, and for these kinds of programs. At this point, this bill has been through the Senate Environment and Energy Committee, and then it kind of stalled there. It got second referenced to the Budget Committee. There's not a lot to do about this bill. This year, we've decided we're gonna wait until the next session to try to move it because there's so many other really necessary and deserving pieces of legislation. So we're going to continue to try to get co-sponsors on this bill. And so for all of you that are listening, we encourage you to reach out to your elected representatives at the state level to sign on as a co-sponsor to S1034 or A4399, which is the Compassion for Community Cats bill. We're going to prep for next season by trying to load them up with lots of co-sponsors. So I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, who's going to talk a little bit more about our municipal and county level work.
Hello, everybody. So there are, as many of you may know, there's 565 municipalities in New Jersey. And so we're not going to take the time, obviously, to talk about all 500 plus of them, or we would never stop talking. So, and luckily there are about 140 who have already either passed some type of ordinance or have supported TNR in some other way. So I just wanted to show here, you know, each one of these municipalities is in one of these stages of advocacy, from illegal all the way up to supported, whether that be financially or with staff, with another nonprofit, something to that effect, some resources that they put towards solving this problem. And so I think to get where we're going, which is ultimately, we want it to be supported, we need to know where we're at. So look at your community to see, is there a feeding ban? Does my community do nothing? Is there no laws against what I'm doing? And we want to sort of negotiate up from there. And we don't want perfectionism to get in the way of progress when doing this, because I think a lot of times we want our community to pay for everything. We want our community to make it perfectly legal. And at this point, we just can't get from A to Z by going 0 to 60. So we have to take any progress that we can. And so what I've seen from our work so far is these are sort of the main reasons why in our municipalities, why they are supporting TNR one way or another. And a lot of times it, again, is these sort of 5 main themes, which is increases public health and safety, and improves quality of life for residents, whether that be people who like or hate cats, and everybody in between. And so we all want there to be less cats outside. So we do have a common goal in that way. And it responds to the majority of public opinion. That's incredibly important. And it's more effective use of their tax dollars, of your tax dollars, people who are living in these municipalities. So everybody can get on board with those things. And these are just a few reasons, why we see commonly why they are not supporting them. And this could be misinformation, or it could be just that they have concerns about something that hasn't happened yet. So, public health and safety concerns, these are all valid. Financial concerns, fear of legal repercussions if they do endorse a program like this, if somebody gets bit or this or that, what happens in those circumstances. And then again, skeptical of TNR's efficacy, which really, I know we always say it sounds counterintuitive, put cats back outside so that there are less cats, but really, if you really go through the whole process and learn a lot about it, that really is what happens. And we just wanted to, you know, have some quick action items just that are more general. We are having our own, you know, virtual TNR advocacy workshop in a couple of weeks, which this, you know, event is not to go into the intricacies of what we do at a local level, because again, that would take too much time. So we wanted to just have a future opportunity for people to learn what they can do in their community. And again, it's going to be August 19th at 6 o'clock. So it's going to be virtual. So anybody who wants to RSVP can just email tnr@pfaonline.org. And we're going to have some of these resources sent out by Emily, obviously, after the presentation. And again, this is just a preview of what we would kind of be going over and much, much more. So getting to know the structure of your local government, how to approach elected officials, how to collect information, you know, and how to present that information to your elected officials to make real change. And I just wanted to, this is just a screenshot really quick of, I do think that if we're talking about local advocacy, I think it is also important to note advocacy really on an individual level in your own neighborhood, your own street, your own community. And that is really learning the practice of TNR. And if you are interested in doing that, we do have a YouTube channel with a few videos that hopefully we're going to expand in the future. But we do have a recording of a past TNR workshop on there that goes over, you know, how to actually perform TNR. So that is on our YouTube channel there. And this is just our contact information, which again, will be available after the presentation. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So thank you all. And I see that we are getting a little short on time. So I'm just going to really, really briefly go through some of the actions that folks can take to be effective in their advocacy, just very quickly. If, like Kathy, I can share my screen here. All right. So just really, really briefly, it's already been mentioned that everyone has 2 assembly members and 1 senator, and everyone is up for re-election this November. So it is actually a great time to be in touch with your elected officials. Here is information which I will share after the fact of where you can find who your state senator and assembly members are. Make sure we're looking at the state. Senator Booker is a great guy, but he doesn't need to hear about all of the state level work that's happening. He's not your state senator, he's your US senator. So just keeping that in mind. And then when we're talking about being an effective advocate, this is just kind of general tips for having these conversations. Being brief, to the point, always respectful and courteous. Make sure you're providing background information and letting your lawmakers know you live and vote in their district. Be clear about what your ask is, what specifically you want them to do. Explain why it affects you, your community, why you're concerned about the issue. Consider non-animal welfare arguments. We've had a lot of conversation about that today. It's always helpful to expand the reach and the influence of a bill by making those kind of arguments. Be honest, stick to the facts. If you're not sure about an answer to a question that they may have, reach out to one of us. We can get you the answer. It's best to always stick to what you know, say you don't know if you don't know, and don't try to fudge it. Be flexible, remain in communication with their office. So attending hearings, submitting testimony, these are all follow-up things you can do. As to specific outreach, you can contact your lawmakers with an email. A phone call is even better, as Kathy said. For these types of contact, try to keep your message to one topic. Ask for a reply. And it's also a great time to schedule virtual meetings with your lawmakers right now. They are having meetings even though they're on recess. It's a good time to reach out, to have a meeting. Make sure you thank them for their time, thank them for anything that they've done in the past. Give them relevant information, listen as well as talk. It's important to hear any arguments that they have, any issues that they have, and follow up with a personal letter thanking them for their time. And there again is the link to find your elected officials, which I will send out after the meeting. There's also other ways to support legislation, responding to everyone's calls to action, attending community meetings and raising questions about animal welfare legislation there, sharing information about animal welfare welfare legislation with your network on social media and in person. Kathy talked a little bit about letters to the editor and how important that is to share your voice publicly with your local papers. And believe it or not, voting does matter. Voting is, of course, who you vote for, completely your business, but whether you vote, it's public information, and it's lawmakers' business to know who is voting. So if you don't vote and you're not perceived to influence other voters, legislators are less likely to be influenced by your position. So with that, there's everybody's contact information. This will definitely be shared by everyone, by me after the meeting. And that is that. So I will stop sharing now and just briefly get to some quick Q&A. So we had a question for you, Adam, about whether there was any work to support the moratorium on factory farms phase out by climate groups and environmental organizations.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. And I I responded directly to that with a link to the groups that are endorsing the bill, and you might be able to share that. But yes is the answer. We have within our sort of coalition of different types of groups supporting the bill, we have several national environmental groups because of, you know, the harmful impacts to the environment, the air pollution, the water pollution, the, you know, emissions that contribute to climate change. So it's an important part of the coalition are our organizations in the environmental community.
Wonderful. Okay, well, just looking at the time, I think we are going to leave it there. The other questions are sort of informational anyway, it looks like. So I want to thank everyone for attending and for participating. Oh, briefly, I guess, Jane, if you have time, can you explain the 7-day stray hold and what the change is for the compassion for community cats bill?
The 7-day stray hold? I can't
Yes.
see the question, apparently.
Yes, it's just to clarify the 7-day stray hold. They don't understand it and kind of what the impact is.
All right, so in New Jersey, anytime an animal is impounded at a shelter, they must be held for 7 days. Either, you know, before whether they're surrendered or impounded as strays. So strays have to be held for 7 days before they can be offered for adoption or have any other disposition. For surrendered animals, they have to be offered for adoption for 7 days. So in New Jersey, basically those two tenets mean that every cat that enters a shelter has to be held for 7 days before you can do anything with it, really. So this would allow, this bill changes that for cats that are being TNVR'd only, not for any other disposition, but only those that are being live released after being neutered back to their original location.
And if you have time, Jane, just one more question about the requirement to spay, neuter cats before they are adopted. There are a couple of questions about how this would relate to kittens, and occasionally kittens are adopted before time when some may feel comfortable with spaying and neutering, and if there's anything related to that you can share.
Yeah, so there are exemptions in the law that allow for, you know, medical issues. Age obviously is one of them, and there's also a tenet in there that we put in that would allow anyone who can't find a vet that's comfortable doing pediatric spay neuter within their county or neighboring counties, that would also qualify for an exemption.
Perfect.
And Emily, if I could just jump in a minute too, I saw there were a couple questions about, I guess, geared towards how we decided what bills we were going to go over. I think as usually is the case with many of these advocacy and issue webinars, sorry about that. There are many bills that we care about that we would love to be discussing, but we don't have 8 hours, 10 hours. We all have to get back to work, working for animals. So Just because we haven't presented on particular issues doesn't mean we're not following them or we don't care about them. But I think this set of issues are, key priority bills that are positive, good bills that deserve the support of animal welfare advocates in our state and have advanced, to some level or another, and have a very good chance of advancing to become law this year. So that's the explanation for why some bills are covered and others have not been covered at this particular time.
You're absolutely right. I mean, here we are already over, and we covered so many issues. It's hard to cover all of them. And thank you all for those of you who stuck with us. We will, of course, be sending out the recording and all of the follow-up information on Monday to all registrants. So thank you again to all of the panelists who gave such great information. Thank you to Brian's supervisor, who's there making sure that he's doing a good job. And thanks everyone who attended. We will follow up and hope to see you advocating for animals very soon. So goodbye.